There is a moment in early September, usually around the second week, where the garden stops being a garden and starts being a storage unit. Everything still looks alive. Nothing is doing anything. The phlox has gone gray around the ankles, the iris fans are flopping sideways, and the lily stems are standing there brown and hollow, like somebody forgot to take them down. And in that 2-week stretch, while nothing appears to be happening at all, roughly a dozen different organisms in your beds are quietly finishing the most important part of their year: laying eggs, forming survival structures, moving from the leaf down into the crown where the frost will not reach them. They are not damaging your plants right now. That is the part that fools people. Every one of them is setting up to damage your plants in May, and every one of them is doing it in tissue you are physically capable of picking up and carrying to the curb this weekend. That is the entire premise of this video. 9 plants, 9 specific things overwintering on them, and a cut height for each one that takes the problem out of your garden instead of leaving it to be somebody's spring surprise. Put your zone in the comments now before we start, because timing on half of this list shifts by 3 or 4 weeks between Zone 4 and Zone 8, and I want to see the spread. Number 4 on this list is the one I expect the most arguments about, and number 7 is the one that will save you the most money. Why the tag never tells you this quick thing worth saying up front. The plant tag tells you sun, spacing, height, and zone. It does not tell you that your iris is a host for a moth with a 9-month life cycle, because that information does not sell an iris. The garden center flipped to mums and corn stalks 3 weeks ago, and nobody working the floor in September is thinking about Macronoctua onusta. None of this is a conspiracy. It is just that nobody in the retail chain is paid to think past the sale, and the biology that matters most to you runs on a calendar that starts after you have already paid. Group 1, the ones where you are removing eggs. These 4 are insect problems, not fungal ones. That distinction matters because it means no spray you buy in April will help you. The generation is already placed. 1. Bearded iris, Iris germanica. Start here if you do nothing else on this list. The iris borer moth is flying right now. She does not lay eggs in the soil, which is what most people assume. She lays them on dead and dying iris leaf tissue and on the loose debris lying around the clump, several hundred per moth, and those eggs sit there all winter, in your bed, on material you could remove in 10 minutes. They hatch in spring. The larvae crawl into the new fans, chew down inside the leaf, and enter the rhizome. By July, that rhizome is a hollow cavity, and the wound is an open invitation to bacterial soft rot. The mush and the smell people find when they finally dig a failing clump is the end of a story that started in September. Nothing you spray reaches a larva inside a rhizome. Nothing rescues a rhizome once soft rot is in it. But the eggs are sitting on the outside of dead leaves. Cut fans back to a 4 to 6 inch fan. Then strip every dead leaf, every loose papery sheath at the base of the rhizome, every scrap on the soil. Bag it, curb it. Do not pile it at the edge of the bed, and deal with it in October. Zones 3 to 9. A named variety rhizome is $12 to $25 to replace, and an established drift is easily $100. This is the highest value 20 minutes in your entire fall garden. 2. Garden phlox. Phlox paniculata. Everyone knows phlox for mildew. Almost nobody knows about the phlox plant bug. Lopidea divisi overwinters as eggs inserted into the stems and crown tissue of the plant itself. In spring, the nymphs feed on the emerging shoots and cause that distorted, stunted, pale-flecked new growth people usually blame on frost damage or bad soil. So phlox is a double job. The mildew fungus overwinters as tough resting bodies in the fallen leaf litter, and the plant bug overwinters as eggs in the standing stems. Cutting the stems and leaving the litter solves half of it. Raking the litter and leaving the stems solves the other half. Cut stems to 2 inches, then get down and clear every fallen leaf off the crown. Both halves, or you have not really done it. Zones 4 to 8. 3. Asiatic and Oriental lily, Lilium. If you're east of the Mississippi or anywhere in the northern tier, you probably already know the red lily leaf beetle. Bright scarlet, about a third of an inch, and it will skeletonize a lily in a week. The adults overwinter, not the eggs, and they overwinter in soil, under leaf litter, and in the plant debris sitting around your lily stems. Often not on the lilies themselves, which is why people who clean up religiously still get hit. But the collapsed stems and mulch at the base of the clump are prime shelter, and every one you remove now is one that does not walk out in April to lay 450 eggs. There is also botrytis on lilies, which produces those tan, water-soaked blotches in humid summers and overwinters directly on the old stems. Cut stems to 2 inches once the foliage has yellowed. Not before. A green lily stem is still loading the bulb for next year, and cutting early costs you flower size. Zones 4 to 8 for most orientals, 3 to 9 for Asiatics. 4. Delphinium. Delphinium elatum. This is the one people argue with me about because delphiniums are already treated as fussy, short-lived plants, and most gardeners have made peace with replacing them. They are fussy. They are not short-lived. What kills them is a cyclamen mite population that overwinters in the crown and in the tight dead leaf material packed around it, plus bacterial leaf spot that survives on the same debris. Both of them attack the emerging growth in spring, which produces the blackened, twisted, stunted shoots that gardeners read as winter kill. Cyclamen mites are microscopic, and there is no home-use miticide that reliably clears them once they are established. Sanitation is not the cheap option here. It is the only option. Cut to the ground, 1 to 2 inches, and clean the crown out thoroughly with your fingers, not a rake. Get the packed material out from between the stems. Bag all of it. Zones 3 to 7. If any of this is landing, hit like. That is what puts it in front of somebody who is out there this weekend with shears and no idea any of this is happening. Group 2, the ones where you are removing fungal survival structures. Different mechanism. These fungi are not just sitting there as spores. They build purpose-made overwintering bodies that shrug off frost, and they build them in September and October, in your beds, on your plants. 5. Peony, Peonia. Botrytis on peonies is the classic version of this. Through summer, it produces spores on the foliage. As the leaves die back, it switches modes and forms sclerotia, hard, dark resting bodies, at the base of the old stems and in the soil around the crown. Those sclerotia release spores in spring, straight onto your emerging red shoots. What you get is blackened stem bases, buds that brown and collapse before opening, and a decline people blame on a wet April. The timing detail that matters. Cut before the stems collapse. Foliage lying flat against the crown is exactly the condition sclerotia form in. Standing stems that you remove cleanly are far less of a problem than collapsed stems you remove 2 weeks later. Cut completely to the ground, 1 to 2 inches, clean blades, everything out of the bed. Zones 3 to 8. A clump that has bloomed for a decade is not really replaceable at any price because you will not source the same plant. 6. Hollyhock, Alcea rosea. Nothing on this list carries inoculum as reliably as a hollyhock with rust. Puccinia malvacearum produces the orange pustules on leaf undersides and overwinters 3 ways at once, on fallen leaf debris on the standing stems, and, this is the one people miss, on living basal foliage at the crown. That green rosette at the bottom looks healthy and is often the bridge that carries rust straight into next season. Cut everything down. Collect every fallen leaf, and take the basal rosette leaves too if they show any pustules at all. One more thing, because otherwise this is wasted effort. Rust also overwinters on common mallow, which is the weed in your alley and along the fence. Clear that too, or you have simply left the reservoir in place. Zones 3 to 8. This is the plant where 90% removal gives you roughly 0% benefit. 7. Lupine, Lupinus. This is the money one, and almost nobody does it. Lupine anthracnose overwinters in the old stems and crown debris and is the reason lupines rot and collapse from the base in wet springs. Sitting alongside it is the lupine aphid, which is enormous, gray, and arrives in numbers that will bring a flower spike down under its own weight. The reason I call this the expensive one, lupine is a plant people replace annually without ever questioning it. A flat of gallery or mini gallery lupines runs $40 to $60, and a lot of gardeners buy that flat every single spring because their lupines never come back. Frequently, they never came back because the anthracnose was sitting in the crown litter the entire winter. Cut to the ground 2 inches. Clear the crown completely. Compost none of it. Zones 4 to 8, and they resent heat, so southern gardeners are fighting an additional battle here. Group 3, the ones where the foliage mat itself is the weapon. These two are not really about a pest or a pathogen you can name, they are about physics. 8. Hosta. A hosta crown ends up under a wet mat of collapsing leaves. That mat does 2 things. It is where slugs and snails lay their eggs, dozens per slug, insulated from frost by the foliage above, which is why baiting every spring never seems to reduce the problem. You are killing the survivors while the next generation sits protected under the exact foliage you left standing, and it holds moisture directly against the crown through freeze and thaw, which is a straight road to crown rot in poorly drained shade. Cut to the crown once the leaves yellow and flop. Rake out the old mulch, not just the leaves, and replace with a thin, fresh layer. You are removing the incubator. Zones 3 to 9. 9. Veronica/Speedwell. Veronica spicata. Veronica is the other plant with an undeserved short-lived reputation. Septoria and downy mildew both work up from the lower leaves through summer and overwinter in the debris. But the bigger issue is structural. Veronica forms a low, dense basal mat, and a layer of dead foliage packed onto that mat through a freeze-thaw winter rots the center out. What you get in spring is a ring of live shoots around a dead middle, and most people read that as the plant just going. Cut to 2 inches, and then actively brush or hand clear the crown so it is open to air rather than buried. Zones 3 to 8. 3 things that undo all of it. Wipe your blades between plants. Cut mildewed phlox. Walk to your iris. Make a fresh wound with the same shears. You have moved the problem rather than solved it. Spray bottle of 70% isopropyl in your back pocket. 10 seconds per plant. None of this goes in the compost. Sclerotia, rust spores, insect eggs, mite populations. A home pile almost never holds the sustained core temperature needed to kill them, so every infected clipping you add is one you will spread back across the garden as finished compost next year. Bag it, bin it, and take the loss. Read the plant, not the calendar. In Zone 3, you may already be late on several of these. In Zones 8 and 9, you are 3 or 4 weeks out, and cutting now will push soft growth that gets frost-killed in November. The real signal on every plant here is yellowing foliage or your first light frost, not the first of the month. The list: 1 pass iris, fans to 4 to 6 inches, every scrap bagged for borer eggs, phlox, stems to 2 inches plus the litter cleared for plant bug eggs and mildew, lily, stems to 2 inches after yellowing for leaf beetle shelter and botrytis, delphinium, to the ground with the crown hand cleaned for cyclamen mite, peony, to the ground before the stems collapse for Botrytis sclerotia. Hollyhock, everything including infected basil leaves plus the mallow for rust. Lupine, to 2 inches with the crown cleared for anthracnose and aphids. Hosta, to the crown with the old mulch replaced for slug eggs and crown rot. Veronica, to 2 inches with the crown brushed open for leaf spot and mat rot. 9 plants, somewhere under an hour on a normal border, and you walk into spring without a single one of those organisms waiting in the bed for your new growth to show up. Tell me your zone in the comments, and tell me which of these 9 is standing in your garden right now, untouched. And if you have ever replaced a lupine or a delphinium and assumed it was just a difficult plant, say so. I suspect a lot of us have been paying an annual subscription for a problem we could have cut out with shears. Subscribe, because the next window closes just as fast as this one. Go get your shears.